Got it. Makes sense.
We are.
And it says it's waiting for you to let me in.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, how strange. Okay, hang on.
It says they've let you know that I'm here. No? Why would it be different than the last meeting, I wonder?
It was for me too. Okay, let me.
Wonder if I did the wrong one by accident or something. Let me just. Special.
A way that I can invite you again. Okay, I'm gonna send you. Do you want me to send you an email? Is that the best
To
way?
LeBlanc Charlwood. I'm not logging into the city email through my, sorry.
Okay, so to who? What am I sending it to?
LEB LANC Charlwood.
LEV.
LEB LeBlanc
Oh, okay.
LeBlanc
LeBlanc.
Charlwood, all one word, at gmail.com. Let's see if
Okay.
it's a different number.
See if that worked.
I'll close the other one. Leave.
Oh, I know that.
Here we go.
Public work from development service. Is Chris, that's the new person? Is it?
Kristen, no. Oh, yes. The grant application.
We ready?
Who we got on here? We've got.
Yep, I'm in.
But Nicole, I don't see Keith, I don't see, Jessie was there. There's Nicole, we know she's here.
I thought,
Cal just left the room.
there
Elvis is back in the building.
and I thought,
Just turning the thermostat down.
What's in the bottle there, Cal? Oh, vodka, okay.
what about Counselor Morrison? Is she joining us for this one?
I thought she was.
Christy,
I thought so too.
yeah, Christy's joining us because we have that application in for development approval program grant. Yeah. Okay, ready?
Well, we're short,
We're gonna start.
we'll just, 1, 2, 3, 4, sure, fine, yeah,
Christiana's not coming.
she's not,
And we know Jessie's here.
I thought.
No.
I thought she was just, I thought Council Morrison was just gone for the
I
first
thought she was
meeting.
gonna miss the first part of the day.
I thought she, okay,
Let's start, please.
sure, absolutely, yep. And we are live streaming, so.
Are we? Okay, folks, we're gonna call the meeting to order. I don't see Janice, but I must admit I wasn't 100% sure if she was joining us for this part of the meeting or not till later at 7 o'clock. So with that, welcome everybody and thank you for being here. And I'd like to start off with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered as a traditional territory of the Tanaha, Silix, and Senex peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor the connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Renwick and second by Councillor Woodward. All in favour? Carried. And next, I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes of the April 27, 21 special meeting, March 30th, 2021 special council meeting, May 11, 2021 special regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Woodward and Councillor Charwood. All in favour? Oh, sorry, Rick, you had your hand up? No, you're okay. All in favour? Carried, thanks very much. Okay, the first item on our agenda is the
There's other minutes for approval there.
LGDAP Local Government Development Approval Program Grant application that we've made. And the City of Nelson has submitted a grant under the Local Government Development Approval Program administered by the Union of BC Municipalities, UBCM, for the implementation of the to establish best practices and innovative approach to improve development approval processes. The grant submission deadline is May 7, with the grace period of 1 month to submit council resolution endorsing the grant application. Now, council is now requested to pass the required resolution to complete the grant application, if you wish. But there's a report here, and Christy, you wanted to say a few words about it, did you? See your name, but we can't see your picture.
Hi.
There you are.
I don't have anything to say up front, but happy to answer any questions if there
Okay.
are any.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions from council? If
I would move the recommendation.
Councillor Renwick moves the recommendation, therefore be it resolved that the corporation, the City of Nelson, be authorized to approve apply for 350,000 grant funding under Union of BC Municipalities Local Government Approval Program, and further, the City of Nelson staff be responsible for the overall grant management. We need a seconder. Councillor Lochtenberg. Colin, did you have anything you wanted to throw your 2 cents?
Yes.
That's a hell of a lot of money if you get your hands on it.
Yes, Mayor. We had got this not too long ago, and we have we're not bad for having some of our items online, but we can always improve. Now we had transition in staffing, so this hasn't helped, and we've had a lot of other grants, so people were kind of, I think, trying to figure out how we would fit this into the plan. It's one of those good things that we're really hopeful we can get the money, but then once we get the money, now we're going to be scratching our heads on how we fit it inside the priority list of and how we're going to get people to help us get it implemented. But again, just the whole idea with, I think that as council's aware with the onset of the pandemic, having as much online as possible is, valuable. And I think that there's a lot of value as well for, coming in, and because a lot of times we can be a bit clunky sometimes. So if you want to come up and get something done, then you're like, oh, well, we can take this payment, but if you got to take that payment, you got to go downstairs. And so we're really thinking that we can streamline this based on what we've got in the application. So there's a lot of confidence there, but we also recognize that it's also going to have to try to be fit into our priorities of what's going on in the department.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thank you. Any further questions? Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's for Christy or Colin, but can we use this software? Part of the application is for acquiring a digital tool to accelerate approval process and management of the process. Ideally, we're not getting a tool that's a silo from the rest of the organization. Is this something we can use to supplement the acquisition of our ticketing system, or just a general software infrastructure for managing approval and processing in general? If you understand what I mean, it's just that I can see the ideal application isn't just for this one thing. It's something that can be used across the organization.
So this grant funding is specific to anything to do with our development approvals processes. So the way we've kind of written it in the grant application is to really define that scope for the procurement of the software once we've received the funding. Kind of jotted down some bullet points of what we think we need, but I do think there's opportunity to kind of expand that a bit within the budget that we've provided, and there's still room for discussion as to what exactly that software would look like.
Okay. Well, I would just then encourage you to think about that. You don't necessarily want to buy or acquire a software for one thing when, in fact, they create more problems down the road. Ideally, you acquire something that'll be used in more applications than just development services.
You're
Right.
bang on, Councillor Lautenberg, and on top of that, what we're also hoping is that with this new software, we would maybe get rid of some of our older software. So again, we've got something that maybe is a bit more robust. We've got a few things that some things are already doing, but now we'll be able to do that hopefully, as well as some other things. And certainly it is a bit tricky. As you know, you guys are in this business, many of you, that these things change so quickly. We're also, in putting this application in, because of how quickly, and I know the council's aware of the provincial government sort of has a lot of funds that they're wanting us to get involved in and apply for. We've got a bit of work, with sort of like get the funding and then do a little bit more detailed work, Councillor. We're probably not as detailed on knowing what we want to do, how else it can expand as quickly as the government's like, apply, get this, we want to help communities do this. So I think that there could be a little bit more work that'll be done once. And again, we hope that we get the funding, but some of those questions will be answered at that point in time. It's a little bit different than our normal ones where we're more like, hey, we've got this, we know what we're doing here. We need this amount of money. We've got these other pieces. This was a little bit more a learning curve for us, how exactly we're going to figure this out.
So Colin and Christy, although the report that we have in front of us, it would appear as though this is destined for development services. Like to Rick's question, right?
No, he's correct, but the idea being, like, again, many of these softwares is, how else, what else can we do to integrate? I mean, many of these don't come as a one-off. When you get inside a municipality, they know that you need X, Y, and Z, so they're usually able to serve that. So what I guess I'm saying is that, we've put this in because the development services staff was able to sit down with a vendor and look at kind of what their software would look like and what we can do to improve. But we know inside our procurement, we don't just say, oh, well, thanks for giving us a report, and by the way, if we get the money, we're buying your product. We know that once we get this involved, we know what we're kind of looking for shaping. We're going to have to sit down and figure out how it works. And again, they could very easily have, like many of them do, you've got module exits for development services, but you've already got this piece, you've now got an a la carte. You might want to add something else here, and because you've already bought the bigger part of the project, or you've taken that part on, it's not as expensive, and that there's easier to add on once because you've already invested in it. Some of the things, like in this particular one that we had looked at, had to do with all kinds of stats that we could be able to produce, which I think would be helpful for annual reports and those sorts of things. So again, this collection of data and collecting the data comes value how you hold the data. And like I said, if there's anything I understand about software engineers, is that they understand that and they realize that, yes, you may need it for this, but here's other menu of other things you can do.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, can I just add to that?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add to that we are looking at the organization holistically in what software we have, etc., kind of through that recovery money and our move to Microsoft 365 and Teams and all that. We want to take that whole look, and we do have local government is fire has specialty software. Everybody seems to have specialty software for their own particular department, and we do want to have that overall look of how this all gets integrated. Why are we have data saved under 50 different ways of, is it at the household? Is it at the customer? Is it, and we do look at people, in different ways, depending on kind of how you interact with our organization. But certainly that we are, that is a separate project that we're going to be looking at to really have a look at how we track and store and name data, so that we're not using, fire doesn't collect it in a different way than development services versus finance versus somebody else, which is the current way we operate.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering, through this process, is this a push for streamlining, and with that streamlining of data, do you feel, I mean, I don't know who would answer this question, but do you feel like this is going to lessen the load on staff, or make city staff's job easier and more manageable at the end of the day? Because I mean, I was hoping that would be the goal of all of this, is that the fluidity of the staff moving information and collecting information around the city just becomes that much more easier. Would you say that's the goal?
I'd say certainly one of the goals. Better customer service is certainly a goal, but people clearly understand our processes and can interact with us easier and have all that information up front versus these guys chasing them for, this or that or everything else because people don't really know where it is or understand it. Or Christy, do you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah. And just with respect to the grant requirements, two of the key sort of criteria were, or evaluation criteria were to make data more transparent and available to the public and streamline internal processes. So the whole application has kind of been tailored to that. And that would be the ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. We have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thanks, Christy, for joining us. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
You're welcome. Okay, up next is the Capital Projects Lakeside Pathway Paving Project, revised funding source for 2021 Lakeside Paving Project. The part of the city's 5-year financial plan for 2021 to 2025, Council approved a paving section for Lakeside Path in addition to public art project in the park. These combined projects were part of the grant application the city applied for. Staff has been informed that the application for funding was not successful, with the main reason being that the oversubscription of a limited grant funds available. Staff feels it's important to move forward with the paving and art paving portion of this project and are now requesting that Council approve the using of Community Works funds to achieve this. And there's a report in front of you from our staff, and there's also a recommendation. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg, second by Councillor Renwick. All right, questions or comments? Councillor Lochtenberg is the mover, and then Councillor Renwick is the seconder, and Councillor Page next.
Thank you, John. I read with interest a letter from one of our constituents that I think all of us received about the paving project, and that he raised a point that I hadn't considered, and I'd like to hear. I'm gonna maybe Sebastian, you could take this one about the risk from paving it. So I do like and appreciate that it's not paved as a walker. But then again, I don't really walk that route very much in the winter time. So I'd like you to speak to the winter maintenance of an unpaved path. But the point that he raised about not paving it was that it prevents particularly skateboarders from tearing it up on a paved route, which I could see. Is that, sorry guys, there's quite a bit of noise in the background. Is that something you can speak to? Like, are we trying to make it more accessible and in doing so actually make it less accessible because more people are going to be worried about getting clipped by skateboarders? I just hadn't considered it, so I thought I'd better check in to see if that was a valid concern.
Sebastian, I think that he's asking you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just, my emails kept ringing. So if you hear a bit of beeping in the background, I don't know what's going on. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's a funny thing, right? We're, we want to improve this and the idea was to really improve the conditions for, people that could potentially find it challenging to use a gravel path. And the idea when we wrote the grant initially, it was, making public spaces usable for everyone. And that was definitely what we were aiming for. And, we went there in the spring and took a lot of photos. And if you walk down there in the spring, it's in rough shape for a good amount of time when the snow melts. And when it's frozen, it is, I know some people argue that you'll still get ice on the pavement. That's true, but I believe it's a lot easier to maintain for pavement. I think at the end of the day, I mean, some people will say that bikers will go too fast. The bikers will say that walkers are taking too much space because they're 3 wide. I think we could put some signage up there, say, hey, it's a shared path. Everyone slow down, be reasonable, be respectful. And I think there's room for everyone to enjoy it. I wouldn't want to not improve this because there might be one group. It might cause an issue with one group. I think there's a lot of scenarios with this is an improvement for most. And I think at the end of the day, we're hoping that not a very little minority will cause issues to the majority of the users here.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah, there's actually bikers on there now, believe it or not, so I don't see it changing.
Well, and
okay, Councillor Renwick.
well,
sorry, do you have something else, Ken?
no, just yeah, I did because I guess like I find it somewhat funny that they would be concerned about skateboarders. Again, just on maybe because it's newly paved or whatnot, but being flat, they'd have to actually, strike along with their feet and that sort of thing. But I was thinking more, as some have alluded to, is we got electric bikes, and people kind of doing that, and we have talked about some places like the rail trail or the valley trail in Whistler, they do have sort of the yellow line in between to kind of delineate things. But I kind of in agreement with Sebastian, and maybe on some signage, and I can see us with our own bylaw officers with with their bikes that are down there, that when we get to that stage that we could probably do some educational components on that. It's not a very big strip when you think about how far you're going from, because you get from basically the top by the bathhouses there, kind of ends in the concrete, and then you kind of go along, and it's going to stop by the Save On, and so not a long strip, and again, I would hope that, our community is pretty good about these things. I'm hoping that we got bike lanes for people, they're using their bikes that way. I know that, the road is paved, and I don't see any skateboarders over on the other side, usually going there. You do see some people on their bikes, and people using that as an area sometimes with their strollers. But, again, really hoping our community steps up, and we know that there's been challenges with some of the bikes. I did want to speak too, is that with certainly in talking to Public Works Supervisor, the ability to have this paved and then be able to have the sidewalk plow that also can send out the sand, again, would be something that would be beneficial. And they do spend a lot of time, staff time, in trying to maintain and when it gets soggy and in different stages. And so they really feel that this is a positive by, sidewalk plow going through, getting it down to your kind of black pavements, putting in the sand on there. Yes, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but much like when you're walking here, we want to promote that active transportation, that there is at least a tool here where it wasn't all that easy to do that with the blade on the gravel. So they're certainly feeling like with the hard surface there that they can do a lot better job of cleaning that up. Again, we know that it'll never always be perfect for everyone, but there's definitely some risks and some concerns here, and we're kind of aware of that, and people are raising them. But we're thinking signage, education will be sort of the tools that we'll use.
Thanks, Colin. Cal?
Thank you. Question asked by Councillor Lachtenberg, answered by Sebastian and CFO McClure. I'm in favor of this. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. I had, before this letter even came in and we had this discussion, someone sent me a video of, it's not skateboarders in my mind, but people with motorized wheels zipping around, especially in that traditional in front of the Rose Cafe there between the beach. I'm wondering, have we looked at, or what the cost implications, especially amongst that along that more congested area where the beach is, widening that sidewalk to accommodate more travelers, given how many are going to be motorized going forward? Do we have the opportunity to make this wider and then segregate them out a little bit more, create more space for everybody?
And so, Councillor Page, you're not talking right in Lakeside there where we've already got the concrete, because the kind of the trees are right up against the concrete. Are you speaking about that part?
That's where I've received some comment and videos. I can share them around, but it's speed all along that section, and I think that's the concern, is as we pave this section and continue it off to Save On, is we're just going to see more people, be it on their one-wheelers or their two-wheelers or their shoes that have motors soon enough. I'm sure how we maybe mitigate that and create more room for everybody. So I think we're seeing speed issues definitely in the traditional Lakeside Park, but as we go around the soccer fields, if we're doing this work, can we make it another meter wider without too much consequence, and then put a line down?
Yeah. Sebastian, I didn't know. I mean, again, certainly something that we can look at when we're there. I know that with the path being where it is, there's some drainage things that we need to deal with. And when you start adding in a meter either side, I get somewhat concerned about now we're kind of changing what's sort of been already a bit of a bed for the paving itself. But that's certainly some questions that we can ask of the vendor that will be looking at doing it.
And we do have trees planted all along there. How about we can look at potentially making the parking lot a shared bike path. Certainly that's our area. I'm not sure what the where the tramway goes behind the rose garden there. You know, we could look at, I think for people that want to ride fast, putting them close to the people walking is not sure a great solution. We can try to move them off, and you know, I like the idea of, you know, speed limits and that sort of thing, but you know, I know walking just in Vancouver, you know, I was not used to it. You step on that wrong lane and you're almost taken out there. I don't know if it's safer, you know, having people speed along on that bike lane, because if you're not familiar with it, you're going, oh, I don't, who said that was a bike lane? You could walk here. Until a bike comes, wipes
My
you.
recommendation would, my recommendation would be to not make it too wide and start painting a center line, because it is twisty and turny, and I think if we want this to be part of the commuter link, I think cyclists can still use it in a safe manner. It's just being respectful of other users. But I think, to Kevin's point, there's a straighter way for commuters to use this. And I think what happens if you put the center line is that people now expect walkers to stick to their side, and then it creates that conflict point, and then it creates enforcement issues. Who's going to enforce that? So in the BC Active Transportation Guide, they actually recommend not using the center lines unless it's very busy and there's no other alternatives. So yeah, it was to my surprise as well. I thought it was a good idea, but doing more research and in painting lines, it can create actually other challenges. So I think the long-term goal is to find a better link, continue working on creating better links for commuters, and really giving the information out that this is a recreational path. Expect to move slowly and respect your fellow users.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, you know, what Sebastian is saying there, I think, you know, people have to recognize that Lakeside and soccer fields and that whole area down there is a multi-use area. Many groups use those areas with many different kinds of transportation, walking. So I just think that, you know, with the active transportation, we're trying to have an umbrella that covers the most people and helps the town move around. So change can be a little challenging. I know, being in this job and causing change to happen in our town, but at the same time, you know, these are dedicated, or these are people. We're just trying to help the town become a better a place where people can move around, you know, with ease and safety. So I'm for this. I think it adds another layer of ground protection. Clearing of the snow is important. Year-round use, lots of good stuff there. So I'm just hoping people understand that, and like Sebastian's saying, that people will respect the people on the trail. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have Councillor Morrison and then Councillor Charwood.
I'm of really mixed feelings in regards to the paving of the pathway, having read all of the letters that have come in and having gone down there recently again just to take a look at things. But what I'm interested to know in terms of ongoing maintenance of this, because I'm assuming that we're not putting a hard edge on this pavement, and I'm just wondering about drainage in consideration for the next lovely flood when I can paddle my bike up and over the side and into the playing field. How putting down this blacktop is going to survive that. I mean, the whole idea of why I assumed that it was the crush to start with was, is this something that you can add to? It has good dust control. It is, for the most part, a fairly usable surface if you're a walker or if you're a mom with a stroller. So I'm just wondering about what the long-term upkeep of this is, because I'm assuming that we're going to build it with a little bit of a drainage arc, but like the edges and the wear and tear and outfall of all of that. And are we making it any wider, like in those spots where people have been walking around the little holes and have made the pathway 2 feet wider in some spots just from the wear pattern?
Yeah, a lot of that, what you're talking about, Janice, those little detours have been created because of flooding, because the pathway is in rough shape right now, and we're probably losing, I would say, about 3 months a year use on that pathway, just because of the condition of it, because there's no drainage and potholes and so forth, and that gravel that's on there currently, when it gets wet, sticks to everything, your shoes, your clothes,
So if I could just further that, maybe staff could explain to me about the drainage, because that is a concern for me, is the drainage when we seal it up with blacktop.
Well, you contour it, of course, with black. Anyway, thanks, Janice. Go ahead.
But Councillor Morrison, yes, so yeah, so yes, Councillor Morrison, that's what we've discussed with the vendor, is that there is a number of areas that we've got some drainage situations. So I'm thinking that there will either be some pipe kind of running underneath it to kind of maybe collect the water off and get it more towards the lake. I'm not exactly sure, but that's certainly there's a lot of the area where we believe that it should just be able to follow the path and be blacktop, but there's certainly a number of corners that we know that gather water if you walk down there on a frequent basis. But that's part of the work that we were looking for, is not just, hey, put the blacktop down, but we want to be able to look at and address some of the issues that we have with drainage. And again, what kind of base they'll end up, putting on top, whether or not it's some gravel before they, and then roll it because it's flat with their roller kind of idea. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely have been in contact with the vendor and will, ensure that our engineers are in conversations with them and making sure that we do the best as possible, because we don't want to, and I know that as a vendor as well, they don't want anytime you've got water and you've got pavement, now you've got a problem, and they're, a community minded vendor, and know that that's not something that they want to say, oh, hey, look at this path, it's falling apart. So I'm gonna leave up to their expertise, but in this being the first step in council approving us to go and approach and talk to them, and that would be certainly, we can have discussions and we can bring that back on what their plan is.
Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Morrison, for asking about the permeability, laying asphalt close to the water's edge too with runoff. That I know is a concern for many people, and why wouldn't it be a more permeable surface? But I also hear that there's a concern then clearing it in the winter might be more difficult if it were bricks or something like that. So there's a compromise there to discuss. But I guess we're being asked to make a change to our 5-year financial plan to accommodate this lack of funding. I just don't see an urgency for this to happen, and maybe want a little bit more feedback from staff on why this year, why now, when I like Councillor Morrison, see it as a pretty usable path as it is. I didn't know about the 3 months though. That's helpful to my deliberation, but I still, to change our financial planning to accommodate this paving, I'm not sure I'm supportive of yet. I don't see the urgency.
Thank you.
So the change to the 5-year financial plan, this was in the 5-year financial plan. It was just funded by grant before.
Yeah.
That's the only change we're making. So council approved this project, but at that time we were hoping to get the grant for it, so that the feds doubled the community works funding. So basically we're taking advantage of the project that was approved by council, but funding it in a different way.
Yeah,
The other component, Councillor Charlwood, is that we have the area down where the tramway has, I don't know if you've been down there recently, but they had to tear up a big chunk of the pathway and that sort of thing. So having that stay in that state for another year or so was something that a combined of, hey, we already got this and we can get this taken care of at the same time. And you know, in dealing with that and helping them out, it also helps out, I think, with their grant application to get some funding to deal with some of the costs that they've incurred on that. So there's sort of a few, that's one of the main drivers as well, Councillor Charlwood, that we have this opportunity, the vendor's able to do it in the near future. We have this already kind of torn up space that we would like to get fixed up to get our kind of path complete. Those were some of the reasons. And like you said, it was in the plan, and that's why we had hoped, or we found out, if we had been fortunate enough, then we would have kind of dealt with that already. So that's kind of why we're wanting to move this forward, to kind of wrap and kind of clean that up, that whole area as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, on that note, then I'd like to call the question. We had a mover and a seconder, Councillor Lochtenberg and Councillor Renwick. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, next, resolution to close the meeting to the public. Moved by Councillor Page, second by Councillor Renwick. All in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, just give us a moment or two here so Sarah gets her wheels turning.
Come back in.